Hello everybody, welcome to my studio in Oldfield Road. It's great that you could be with me, and I hope that we'll have a good time over the next hour and a half or so together. I know some of the people who have joined already know me, but I think there's a fair few that don't. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I first became interested in art when I was a boy. I was about 14 and I started to buy student quality watercolour paints with my pocket money, and then quickly went on to oil paints, and I used to paint on oil painting paper, and it was my favourite subject at school, and I used to reserve all day Sunday to paint, to do my art homework. And I wanted to go to art school. However, my father wasn't going to allow his son to go to art school, so I had to go into a different career. However, all the way through my life, I've painted when life's allowed me to. And about halfway through my working life, there was a major downturn in the economy in the mid-70s. So I was out of work, and I retrained and became an academic, a computer scientist. And so that meant the second half of my working life I was a teacher. So I about 5 years before I was due to retire, I started to do art courses with a view to carrying on teaching when I retired in amateur painting. And since I've retired, I've been teaching at a centre in Birkenhead, and I'm a professional associate of the SAA, and I also do presentations and workshops for local art societies. So that's enough about me. We're going to paint in pastels tonight, and one of the things that we need to bear in mind is that I'm controlling all this myself. So if it goes a bit pear-shaped at times, that's a sort of consequence of trying to do the technology on your own and actually do the painting. So this box is a Heilman box. It's the smallest one. It's the one I use for painting on site, and the photograph was taken when it was pristine. The pastels don't look like that now that are in it. So I mostly use soft pastels with a few harder ones. I use new pastels for the harder ones, and for the soft pastels I use Unison, Terry Ludwig, and some Sennelier, and also some I've forgotten, Mount Mission. So they're the brands I use, and you can see that I always take the labels off pastels. I never bother with the names of colours at all, because we can see 2 million colours, and there aren't names for 2 million colours. There are only names for less than 100 really, because there's a lot of different names for the same colour. And pastel manufacturers, I think the likes of Terry Ludwig, they have 600 or 700 in their range, and there's no way I could remember all those names. So I just go by sight, and I have colour charts to reorder from. So that's the pastels that I use. I'm going to say a little bit about tonal values now, because with pastels we've got a restricted range of colour and a restricted range of values, and so I try to pitch my paintings in without using the extreme of white and black, and you can see that when you do that you can certainly encompass the full range with violet, but you can't do that with the lighter colours like orange or yellow. And violet actually is the darkest of the colours on a 3-colour palette, so it's a very useful colour to use. It's also extremely useful to use under landscapes, which is why I've shown it on this slide. So tonight's painting, I'm going to pitch it sort of between 1 and round about 8, with an occasional accent of 9 on this chart, and that's pretty good for a landscape. You keep it a little bit less than the extremes. You can always give an accent with white or an accent with black. Some artists don't like to use pure white. I'll use a pure white pastel stick, but the way that I use it, and you'll see this in the painting, it doesn't look white when I've finished, because I allow the colour that's underneath to show through. So when I start, this is my process. It's a well-established process. I usually do a few thumbnail sketches. I might do an outline sketch for several variations of the view, and once I'm happy with an outline sketch, then I'll go on to do a tonal value map, where simplify it into a small number of values and a small number of shapes. So that's the way that I've done it today. The painting that we're doing today, I've simplified it into 5 shapes and 4 values. And then sometimes I do a notan, which is a Japanese term, and that is just 2 colours, dark and light. In this case you can see that I've used a sepia pen, so it's dark brown and white for the 2 colours. Quite often I don't bother to use the notan. I've included it here because then I can explain it. If you notice that all the tonal values that fall into the bottom 2 on the scale are shown as the dark, and the ones that fall into the top 2 on the scale are shown as the light. Now, it's quite useful to be able to check whether you've got 50% of anything or that sort of thing, because we don't want 50-50s, we don't want a 50-50 division of colour, we don't want a 50-50 division of tone, and we don't want a 50-50 division of shapes. So that help in checking that. So we go and do some painting now. This is the surface that I'm working on, and it's a Fisher 400 grit sandpaper, but I've given it a wash, a watercolour wash, with light red in the Winsor & Newton Cotman range. I particularly liked that light red. Before Winsor & Newton were taken over by a French company, they've changed the recipe, and I've still got a little bit of the old light red left. You can't really see how good it is because it's, of course, transparent and it's on top of a light sandpaper. So then I've mounted the paper using double-sided tape. It's an eco-fused premium double-sided adhesive tape, and it's intended for art and craft use. It's 2 inches wide. It really does hold the paper down flat, so that's a real bonus when you're working. It's on 5mm art core, foam core from Jackson's Arts. So you can see now I'm starting to do a pencil drawing that's I'm not working from the references, I'm just working from my thumbnail. And notice the way that I'm holding the pencil. I'm holding it in a palm grip between 3 fingers and into my palm, and I'm drawing from the shoulder. This type of drawing doesn't need pinpoint accuracy, and so the freedom that you can get by drawing like this is well worth it. If you start to hold it like in a writing grip and then draw with your wrist when you're on an A3 size sheet, it tends to get cramped and you tend to start to draw a lot of detail. Now, I don't need a lot of detail. All I need is enough detail in order to be able to do my blocking. So I keep strictly away from detail, and I think that's more or less all I'm going to do. I'm just doing a little indication of where the rocky outcrop is. I'm going to suppress that rocky outcrop, and the other thing I'm going to do is, you see the big rock in the right hand corner, I'm going to leave that out, and I've used the 2 references, and I'm borrowing the tree from the lower reference, and I'm also borrowing the bare bush that's on the lower right, so that it's a composite. This composition, it's actually in North Wales. It's looking towards the Snowdon horseshoe, and it's a beautiful place. I'm very familiar with this. When I was in my early working life, I did a technical job where I was paid to travel around and provide technical advice to people, and I used to cover North Wales and Cheshire. Drove about 50,000 miles a year, and so there's a lay-by or rest area if you're from across the Atlantic that is very close to this little lake, and if I was passing in the late afternoon after some calls, I would stop in the lay-by and often just have a quick walk down to this lake and a quick cup of coffee out of my flask. So I've got very happy memories of it. These 2 photographs were taken on different days, and they were taken a while ago, and I can't even remember exactly when it was, but certainly it was a good while ago. So this is the block-in that I'm starting. There's lots of different ways of doing a block-in. You can do a dry one like I'm doing, or you can do various types of wet blocking. Well, there are various types of dry blocking. Sometimes people do a single colour blocking with just different tonal values. Other times people might do a complementary blocking so that they block the complement of the colour into the simplified areas that you're blocking in. Well, I'm not doing either of those. I'm actually going to use an average of local colour, but in the sky, because the sky is so important in a landscape that sets the whole scene, I'm putting a little bit more detail into the sky than I will in other areas of the blocking. And I'm using, in order to smooth the pastel out in the sky, I've used a little piece of pipe insulation cut from a pipe insulation tube. That's a very useful tool for blending in pastel. I don't normally do all that much blending, but I do in the blocking, and I also do a little bit of finger blending in the painting proper. So you'll see that as we go on. I'm putting in a few colours in the lake, similar to the sky colours, and it'll all be adjusted as I go along. But what I want to do is I want to allow some of the colour of the support to show through the final painting, and this helps to knit it all together. So when we finish, you'll see that I won't have completely covered up the support. I will have allowed colour to show through. You can see that in the sky currently, although I probably will need to do a bit more work on the sky. You can see the sort of thing. And in terms of the blocking, you notice I'm using the hard pastels, the new pastels. That's an American make, by the way. It made in the USA. You can get it in the UK, but it's not all that easy. So now I'm using, I think this is a Terry Ludwig, this one. I've moved away. I didn't have a suitable colour in the hard pastels for this, so I'm using a soft pastel. You do have to be very, very gentle, have a light touch when you're using these in an underpainting, because it's just so easy to put too much pastel on if you're not careful. And you can see that I'm working on that area there. It's going to be more or less a plain colour, and then I'll work darks and lights over the top of it when I get to it. One of the things to notice is that I've cut some of the foreground out in the reference, and I've played down that rocky outcrop that's on the right hand side of the lake, because I want to emphasize the mountains. These mountains, this mountain that I'm currently painting now is the highest mountain in Wales, and it's a magnificent mountain, and so I wanted to portray my feelings about the place. That's my aim. It's to achieve a feeling that I felt when I've been there in the winter on a sunny afternoon late on, and the sun was very low in the sky and no one else was about. I just had the mountains to myself, and it was a wonderful feeling, and I'm hoping to try and convey some of that feeling in this painting. So notice that with being on my own, I can't change the angle of the cameras, I can't move the camera about, and I can't zoom it in and out while I'm painting, so I would very dearly love to be able to do that. It would be great if I had an assistant who could do that, but that's out of the question, I'm afraid. So we're just going to have to put up with me passing across the field of view from time to time. I'll do the best I can to keep it as clear as I can, but it won't be possible to do it all the time. So as I said, I'm not working on a complementary underpainting. I'm kind of averaging the colours out, the local colours of the scene, and this is a method that's quite useful when you're on site. I would recommend the use of the thumbnail sketches. They only take 10 minutes to do all of them, and you become aware of problems that you're going to meet, and you solve problems in composition before ever you start to put any colour down, and that's really important. So you can see that I've really simplified it, as I said, into 5 shapes. Now the darks are going in, and this area of brush and the left hand tree that I'm just starting on now, these are the 2 darkest areas, or the 2 areas that contain very dark bits. So these are going in, and it's again, when I've finished the blocking, I'll be using the pipe insulation to blend all this, so that I've got a really good foundation to build on. So that's not the painting, that's just the setup for the painting. That's what I'm doing. I'm setting myself up to paint, and it's a really good process that lots and lots of artists do, rather than go straight in to try and paint and finish a tiny little part of it. Then set yourself up so that it's like a game of chess. You're always thinking a number of moves ahead. So now I'm blending the blocking in, and it's quite an easy process. The old pipe insulation costs less than £1 in the UK, and I think less than $1 in the US, and it's 1 metre long or so, or 1 yard long, and you cut it off 1 inch at a time and then split it into 2. So it's the cheapest tool I think I've ever had that I've bought. Of course you can use other things like bits of cardboard as tools, and you can use bits of credit card that are finished. So that's a very, very cheap tool, the pipe insulation, and it works really well on the sanded paper. People use all kinds of things, but I really like this one. I can't remember who recommended it to me, but whoever did has done me a great favour. I'm not too worried about staying inside lines, and it's nice when it's misty and blurry. It gives me the ability to modify things and change things. So that's the blocking completed, and we can get on to the next stage now, and start the actual painting. So this gets done in a couple of stages, and what I'm intending to do is about halfway through stop for a break, a 10-minute break, and I'll review whether any questions have come in, and at the end of the break, if there have been any questions, I will I'll answer them to the best of my ability. One of the really weird things about working with this that I found, because this is the first time I've done a live stream, I've had a couple of little experiments, and it really is peculiar, because what I'm seeing at my end, apart from when I haven't, obviously I'm not seeing it when I've got my back turned to you, but what I see on my computer is about 30 seconds ahead of what you're seeing on your computer, and so that's incredible really, because it just does your head in. You're talking and you're moving physically, and then on Facebook what you've said happens half a minute after you said it, and you've already said another half minute's worth, and your physical action's the same. So I can't really monitor it at all, so I'm just taking it on faith that it's still carrying on Facebook. So what's happening here now, I think I need to go on to the next stage. There's been some people who are letting me know where they're watching from, and that's absolutely great. Thank you very much. Hello to Janet Rossiter, and it's lovely to see you, Marla Bennick from San Diego, and Keith Moores, Anna Jones from Bramley in England. Keith Moores is from Neston, which is on the Wirral Peninsula where I live. Anne Kernigan from Hoylake, hello to you. Val Canning, hello at Crystal Palace. And Diane Booth from Blackpool, it's great to have you with us across the water. Dorothy Kelly, absolutely great to say hello. And Val Canning's asked if the film will be available to watch later. Well, it will be saved on Facebook, so you'll be able to find it on Jeff's Arts Facebook page in the videos section. But also I will be putting it up on my YouTube channel. If you just search on YouTube for GEOF''S and then space and then art, and Jeff and art have a capital letter at the beginning, that'll bring you straight to my channel. There's quite a lot of things on there. I've done a lot of short teaching stuff for my class that's at the Spider Project, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we're going through, but it's all mainly aimed at beginners. I've done one or two pastel demonstrations, but very short ones, and most of it is in acrylic for beginners. However, I'm intending to increase the number of pastel videos that will be available. So who else have we got? Janet, Laura Logan, hello Laura, and Elizabeth Lindsay, thanks for telling everyone that Janet asked what was the sandpaper, in case someone else didn't get the information. It's Fisher 400 grit. I really like it. It's on quite a stiff backing, and it takes wet underpaintings really well. You can do watercolour underpaintings and alcohol underpaintings, and mineral spirits underpaintings, and hardly buckles at all. I can't really talk through those in this demo, but they'll be for another time. Anna Jones, hello, and Karen Evans, hello. I think you're watching from West Kirby, yes you are. And Fioretta Evans as well, and Glyn Evans, yeah, that's lovely. So Karen also asked what sandpaper, so now everybody knows, hopefully. So there are the questions. I'll have a look at the, when I finish the painting. Excuse me. And I'll, if there's any more questions, I'll answer those. Fortunately, the ones you've already asked me are pretty easy, so it hasn't thrown me off my track. So because I'm going to paint again now. I'm looking at your comments on my phone because I don't change out of me the setup I've got on the computer. It's just too risky. So I'll try and get switched to the other camera and see how we get on. I'm starting to put in a little bit of detail into this picture. It's not copied detail from the photograph. You'll notice that I just make marks. I use the pastel stick on its side for most of the painting, and then towards the end I'll use it on its edge. But I do very little drawing. Mostly with pastel pencil. I might just put the odd thing in at the end, and I use pastel pencil for the underpainting at times. Sometimes I use an ordinary graphite like I did tonight. So we're getting a little bit of the darks in, and it's I've actually missed some of the painting when my camera froze. You can see that I've already put some snow in, and it's a real shame that you missed that. You will see me do the other slopes with the snow, hopefully, but I didn't realise, of course, because I got my back to it, that the camera had frozen, and so while I was painting away, you were watching the same thing. So what I'm doing now, I'm gradually building up the painting. I'm putting in darks, and I'm putting in medium tones, and you can see those dark areas on the slope of that mountain. I don't like that. I'm going to have to modify that. So I'm going into these trees now, and this is a Terry Ludwig pastel. It's a beautiful dark green, and it's really good for the darks, both in conifers like these, but also in deciduous trees as well. I use quite a lot of purple in the deciduous trees in the darks, rather less so in the conifers. The dark purple goes really, really well. If this was all green grass, I would also have some fairly darkish purple underpainting under it, but as it's a warm orangey colour, I've done a warm underpainting. However, that reference in the top left corner, and the colours are not so good. It's an old photograph, and the orange, it's not that orange in reality. So I'm not copying the photograph by any means, as you will have already realised, but I'm also going from memory, because, as I said to you, my aim is to try to portray something of the way I felt when I watched it, when I looked at the scene, when I was, it would be about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I probably had another 1 or 2 calls to make, and then a 2-hour drive home in the dark, because of course I can't remember whether it was just exactly whether it was just before Christmas or just after, but it was in the winter, obviously. The hills have got their first dusting of snow on, so it could well in Snowdonia have been in December. I had a really exciting week painting wise last week. With this lockdown, of course, I've not been able to get out and do any painting on site, and I'm a member of the Southeastern Pastel Society of the United States, and of course not been able to go to the meetings. I've posted onto their Facebook page and also their website, and I've taken part in their international online exhibitions, but I saw the meeting advertised and decided to do a Zoom meeting last Monday, and so I attended it, and it was really wonderful. I was made extremely welcome and counted as the guest of honour of all things, but they had a business meeting which lasted about 3/4 of an hour of all the normal things like the President's report and the Secretary's report and the Treasurer's report and those kind of things, and then an absolutely superb demonstration by a Japanese lady whose name I can't remember just offhand, and she paints the most gorgeous figures in a very painterly pastel manner, and so that went on my time from about 9 o'clock in the evening till 2 o'clock in the morning. So I was a bit tired on the Tuesday, but then on the Tuesday evening I started a 3-day workshop with Richard McKinley, and if you haven't heard of Richard McKinley, you really should Google him, because he's the president of the International Association of Pastel Societies, and he's a phenomenal painter, but also a phenomenal teacher. He's been teaching and painting for 50 years, and we did 3 5.5-hour sessions on consecutive days, and they started at 6 o'clock my time and finished about 11:30, and it was such concentrated learning. I learned more about pastel painting from Richard in those 3 days than I have in a whole pile of workshops and books previously. I haven't had time to digest it properly and go back and look at it, so I can't incorporate an awful lot of that into this painting, but I can really recommend that you would go with have a look at Richard online. He's done some videos, some teaching videos, and he's written a couple of books. I've got both his books, and he is absolutely superb. So as you can see, I'm now working on this nearer slope. I'm darkening up the shadows a bit, and then, because what the thing about this scene is there's very little linear perspective in it. We're completely dependent upon aerial perspective in order to get a feeling of distance from the foreground to the background. So this is the way I paint the snow. I use a white pastel, but I just kiss the surface with it. Very, very light touch indeed. And then the colour that's underneath shows through. So although it's light and it reads as a dusting of snow, it doesn't read as white. And so that's the way that I use a white pastel. And it's well worth remembering that. If you press hard, then you'll get solid white, and it won't sit in. It certainly wouldn't sit back the way those mountains are beginning to sit back now. So it's really worth cultivating the lightest possible touch you can. It was quite difficult for me when I started to paint with pastels. I'm 6'4" and 16 stone or 225 pounds, and an ex-rugby player. So a really light touch was quite difficult to achieve, but I've done a lot of practice and it's beginning to work for me. I'm thinking that I'm going to have to change the sky. And we've got this tremendously strong diagonal with the light snow going up the ridge. And your eye could very easily pass up the diagonal and out into that top right hand corner and out of the painting. So I think at some point I'm going to darken that sky there and try and create a path for your eye to come back round. So I'm putting in a bit more green than's in the reference. As I said to you, the colour in the photograph doesn't really reflect that part of Snowdonia. So also I've introduced green trees on the left hand side, so I need some green in other parts of the painting, otherwise that would just be an isolated green block, and that's not a good thing. It's always good to have colour when you use a colour in more than one place in the painting, and then that way our eye can move around from colour to colour and from parts of the painting that are the same colour. So that's what I've done there. However, we now need some more darks on this brush. It's I don't know what it is. It's obviously it's a deciduous bush, a row of bushes. So all we've got is an amorphous mass of brown twigs. So just as I did with the tree, I'm going to have to work from memory really. The photograph's not giving me any guide at all worth having. So I'm allowing the painting to talk to me. That's a thing that I said at my class in the Spider project in Birkenhead. We've got about 200 people who come there, and it's a project that supports people that are very vulnerable and they've got a number of different types of illness to get back on their feet and into society. And we do it through educating people and also where people have been isolated for quite some time. We help them to become social beings again. And I was in the class one time and I was saying that I never copy photographs. I'll use a photograph as a reference, and then when I get so far into the painting, I don't really look at the reference again much at all. I'll let the painting speak to me. One of my students said, I don't want any painting speaking to me. I've had enough voices in my head to last me the rest of a lifetime. And so you can use a metaphor in the wrong situations. It doesn't quite work. So there we are. But I do allow the painting to tell me what it needs when I get past a certain point. I have an idea when I start where I want to go, but it's a broad it's a broad sort of motivation, you know, what sort of thing do I want to achieve in broad terms. And the way I've described it in this is I want to achieve a feeling of a late winter afternoon. I'm not bothered about exact detail. For example, those mountains, they wouldn't satisfy a climber. Somebody that's familiar with all the crags and the crevices and the cracks and the different slabs wouldn't be happy with this painting. But for the general viewer, and for myself, even though I'm a mountain walker, I'm not a climber, it's fine. I feel happy with the way it comes out. One of the things, I've got a great affinity for North Wales. I was born on the Wirral, on the north coast of the Wirral, in a little village. And Wales, the border with Wales is in the middle of the River Dee, which is one side of the Wirral Peninsula. So as the crow flies in a straight line, then Wales is about 5 miles away from where I was born and grew up. And our house was in the last road on the village. So I could look out of my bedroom as a little boy up until being a teenager and leaving home. I could see the Welsh mountains from my bedroom. And I've spent many a summer evening when I couldn't sleep because of the light, just sitting watching the light change on the mountains. So it's absolutely a part of me. But we didn't really go to North Wales when I was a child. We went on holiday to Scotland, and we went to the Lake District, and we went to Derbyshire. We went down to the south coast to Devon and Yorkshire, but never North Wales. I didn't start to go to North Wales until I was 17, and I met this amazing girl who she could jive like a dervish, absolutely incredible, and she also loved mountain walking. So I met her at a party and we struck it off right away. Well, that was when I was 17, and I'm 76 now, and we're still an item. 3 children and 6 grandchildren later, and we still love mountain walking and being out. We can't do anything like as much as we used to do. We couldn't do those peaks now. I think the last time I climbed Snowdon, I was I was about 60ish. Since then, we were restricted to the lower slopes and more gentle footpaths, but we still love going. In fact, we've got a weekend booked the weekend after next in the Lake District in the UK, and I haven't really been able to look at the detail of the new restrictions, so I don't know whether we're going to be able to go, but I was hoping to get a full day's painting in on the Sunday, the first Sunday in October, but I don't know. And our daughter and our granddaughter were going to come with us, so we have to see whether that's possible. See, I've darkened that sky now in that corner, so that kind of creates an arch for your eye to go up through the mountains and then across the sky to the left. And I'll make a couple of minor changes on the left hand side of the sky to enhance that. I'm just tidying up that skyline, that mountain, so I think I also need to make some minor changes on the other side of the sky, and then there should be a path for the viewer's eye to go over. This kind of mountain scene where you've got a relatively quiet sky, and you're actually just using the sky as a backdrop. It can be a bit difficult to work out how to get your viewer to come back round into your painting after they've looked at the piece. So that's what I'm working on now there with that. And I've introduced a little bit of more, a slight turquoise hint in that blue. Because sometimes you get that when you get the sun low down in the sky when it's a winter's day. Across the Mersey, which is the other side of the Wirral Peninsula, and I used to go on the ferry early in the morning to work when I was a youngster, sometimes you can see the sky is an amazing turquoise green in the morning, rather than a slightly turquoise blue. So what we're doing now is we're going in and we're making the last changes to add not detail, but to just sharpen things up, to vary the edges, and to generally finish things off. Notice that with those rocks, I've changed the shape. In the reference, that rocky headland is a lovely shape, and you could easily zoom in on that and actually do a sort of a rock still life if you wanted. But as I said, my emphasis is on the mountains. Everything else is a supporting act. So I don't want that rocky headland to be as dominant in my painting as it is in the reference. So I've changed it from that clump of headland rocks to more of a low cliff, and that's going to suffice as far as I'm concerned. Still got quite a bit of work to do on the water. It's not really reading quite right. One of the things I wanted to do, and that's why I moved up in the foreground to reduce the amount of foreground, I wanted to allow a lead in from the bottom left corner into the painting. So this area of bush that I'm working on now provides a block on the right hand side, so you can look at it, but you don't particularly want to hop over it. You tend to slide over to the left if you haven't come straight in on the left, and go through the watery gap and into the painting that way. So it's all about trying to get your viewer to be interested when they see your painting on a wall, that they want to look at it for more than about 10 seconds. And then if you've got them into the painting, then you want to try and keep them there as long as you can. So that's why it's useful to use the sort of tricks where you have the same colour in different parts of the painting to give spots for the eye to jump from one to another, and you have lines that lead around, and the lines can be implied lines. That ridge that goes up to the rightmost peak, that's not a line, but your eye follows it as if it's a line, and that's what you call an implied line. You can create those kind of lines in a grassy foreground, even though they're not there in reality, by carefully making the marks so that you do that. So that's an interesting aspect of painting that has fascinated me for quite a long time. So working on the water now, of course, if you look at the two references, the way I'm painting the water isn't exactly like any of them, because I've made changes, haven't I? I've changed the scene, so I'm having to use my knowledge to put things in the water, and I'm making it as reflective as it is in the top reference, and but there's a lot more to reflect into it in the way I've developed the scene. I don't want it to be too dark on the bottom edge. If you have your water there very light, then your eye can come back and drop out the bottom of the painting. So it's always a good idea, if you've got water at the bottom of your painting, to make it a bit darker than it is in reality. Don't just copy your photograph. Another thing about the photograph, notice the way I've changed the height of the mountains. Now that's the way that they look to us. Photographs in general tend to flatten them, and so you're in a wonderful mountain setting, and you take your photograph, and when you get home you look at it and they don't look anything like as impressive as they did when you were there. So if you want to paint mountains, bear that in mind. If you copy your photograph exactly, then your mountains, they won't give you the feeling of grandeur that they've got when you're actually there. And that's the highest mountain in Wales. The Snowdon Massif is a number of peaks, and it's absolutely wonderful mountain. It's superb. It's where a huge number of British climbers have cut their teeth on climbing before they went off to climb in the Alps and the Himalayas, and other places like the Rockies and Chile and so on. They cut their teeth on this mountain here. The road that runs up to this side of the snowy mountains, past the green, it's the road I came over from the other side of the hill, and it's called the Llanberis Pass, and it's a very dramatic road. It's well worth a trip over if you're in the area. And what I'm doing now, if you notice, I'm working on this brush, I'm using a light pastel and then just a few strokes of dark, and I do it by placing the pastel on its edge. I place this and then I lift it with a slight movement. I don't draw the lines. Now that wouldn't suit everybody, but I do that because I think it works in well with my very loose impressionist style of painting, and so that's the way I often make lines rather than doing it in a drawing way. I'm painting the lines as opposed to drawing them. So a bit more work on the water. We're not very far off the point where I'm likely to leave off. As I said, I'm just darkening this bottom edge so that it's still okay for your eye to feed in, but it's not as likely for it to just fall out. A few more strokes in the foreground just to break up the edge there. I'm doing a little bit more, very short strokes, but all I want to do is break up that edge a bit. So this is an amazing pastel that I'm using now. It's a plum, a very dark plum, a Terry Ludwig, and it's fantastic for darks, where it's not as dark as black. It's like I showed you on that tonal value scale. It's the next one down from black, but it's got that beautiful colour in it. So that shows up in your darks. Now I've decided I need just a couple of touches of light on the edge of that tree. Not too much, just a bit, to show that the sun's just catching that, and also just those couple of green marks will help to pull your eye down when you've gone up and over across the sky. Then you've got that little bit of brightness against the dark. So now I just want to break up that edge by those bushes, so that it's not quite as straight as it was, and just little touches now, nothing dramatic. And the danger at this stage is that you keep adding touches and keep adding touches and then overwork it and spoil it. So the sort of thing I do is to leave it for a day or two and then go back to it. I might turn it to the wall, or I might turn it upside down and sneak up on it. And then after a period where you've not seen it, when you do look at it, it'll speak to you. If it needs something else, it'll tell you. And so that's the way I work. You can't go back to the photograph now. I've changed it so much from the photograph that the photograph isn't of any help. You have to look at the painting and say, do I need this, do I need that? And it's awfully difficult, isn't it? That's one of the questions that people ask all the time. When do you know when it's finished? How do you know when it's finished? And It's like asking how long is a piece of string, isn't it? You don't know when it's finished. So when you think it's nearly finished, put it away and then look at it again. Just tidying up that edge on that mountain. There was a little dark line down there that wouldn't be there in reality, and it's worthwhile just making those marks, and the same with this edge. I'm just broadening that snowfield slightly on that edge so that it didn't look quite so sharp, because they're not all razor edges, although there is a couple of razor edged parts on the Snowdon Massif. Cribcock is one of them, and that takes a lot of bottle to walk over that standing up without putting your hands down. Although these mountains for people in the States are not as high as the Sierras or the Cascades or the Rockies, this is about 3,500 feet in old money. That's from sea level, and the valley bottom is close down to sea level. They also get the weather coming in across the Irish Sea, and so when the weather's bad, it's really bleak up there, and quite a lot of people have been caught out and had disasters, very sadly. So there might not be 10,000, 12,000, 14,000 feet, but they're certainly, when you're on them, they're rugged mountains. I have to slow down at this stage and think hard before you make any more marks, and I think I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much indeed for joining me tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've learned something from it. I've enjoyed being with you. I don't think I'll be doing this every week, but I do intend to do it again. So once again, thank you for being with me. I hope you enjoyed it, and good night.